Hello and welcome to ACMi's live election coverage. I'm Brenda Mahoney.
And I'm James Milan. Glad that you're here with us tonight. It's a big night.
It's a big night. Polls just closed in the last 15 minutes or so. 2 questions on the ballot. Of course, everyone well informed about these. I don't know how you couldn't be. The last year and a half, we've been talking about Arlington High School. So that was the debt exclusion question. And we also had an override for the operating budget.
Right. Debt exclusion was question number 1, as everybody knows by now, I'm sure. And the override, that being question number 2. The results are rapidly coming in, as we understand, and
right.
I think we're going to be welcoming a member or members of our select board
Yes, they will give us official results once those are tallied, but we do have unofficial results. The Build Arlington's Future has been having people legally so approved through the town clerk at each ward and counting those ballots today. And so we have Diane Mahan to come and join us with some unofficial results. And here we are.
Yes, Diane,
this
welcome.
This is the word that everyone's been waiting for.
I'll stand in the middle of you two and keep my glasses on so I can read this.
Here,
Again, just reiterate where these numbers are coming from.
These
please.
are unofficial numbers. What I have right now is all but 4 precincts unofficially on the
So it would be 17 precincts.
Exactly.
21 total.
And more numbers are coming in, so I'm not going to read that. I'm sorry. I'm going to read what I have.
She'll get back to you, folks.
No, all but 4 precincts on the Arlington High School debt exclusion. With 17 of 21, it was 8,084 yes.
That's 8,084.
To 2,434 no. And then for the override, 7,173 to 3,340. But that is not all 21.
Right, as
That's
Diane
not all
has
21.
just
That's
made
not-
clear, right? That's 17 out of the 21. But everybody out there listening, I'm sure, can tell the same as we can, that those numbers are pretty overwhelming, and that it is to me completely unimaginable that the results could change.
Again, these are unofficial results from pollsters, and also Diane. But this is a reflection, at least for the high school, of town meeting, something along the 208 to 10. Obviously, a slight percentage difference there between 8,000 and 2,000. But Diane, what's your reaction to this?
I am so excited. I'm thrilled on both, but I'm really excited about the high school because I'm an Arlington High School graduate, class of 1980. I was there when we had a vote to do exactly what we're doing right now, but the vote went down and we kind of had to do hodgepodge. And the voters ended up paying more in taxes, and we really didn't get a great high school. We got the high school that we now have 30-something years later. So I'm really excited about that, but I'm also really cognizant, really aware of what the select board has heard in terms of people who say, you know, I don't know if I can live in Arlington anymore. The taxes are going to be too high. We've really put in 5 additional, besides circuit breaker, 5 additional warrant articles, which are now bylaws, to help people who are middle to low income, to help them find a way to address that, you know, they're on fixed incomes. They're not getting maybe 2% a year. We want to help you. There are ways that we put in place. Please contact the town manager, the select board. We can work with you because we don't want you to leave Arlington.
Okay, so again, just to reiterate, if you're just joining us, looking like a strong win for Arlington High School and as well as the debt exclusion, unofficial numbers, the override, unofficial numbers, and we have a couple of other select board members able to join us in a few moments. But again, we're talking about $800 estimate on the average single-family home as a cost to taxpayers yearly, starting in 1 or 2 years, or a few years out anyway. And the override, if passed, is around $300, starting this. It would finance this fiscal year, starting in the next tax year. So that's what we have at this point.
Yeah, and it's very understandable that Diane would kind of celebrate the potential news, but at the same time right away be talking about tax relief for those more vulnerable residents here in Arlington, because we have all heard loud and clear, I think, over the course of this campaign that there is great and deep concern about those kinds of issues. So I think it's going to make the pill a little less bitter to swallow for some folks, I think, just to know there are ideas for relief and, in fact, plans for relief on the way.
Yeah, we want to make sure that this works for everyone, and we're aware of the fact that for some people, this is something that's going to be a hurdle for them, and we want to work with them too. We want to keep everyone who wants to be in Arlington, and makes Arlington so special, that we're not moving anybody out. We're going to work with them, and we're going to find a way to make it work, and we're going to find a way to make it work for a new high school, as well as making sure we have the services through the override that everyone holds so near and dear.
Reassuring news, I'm sure. Let's welcome in
More insight. We have town leader members here. Select Board Member Dan Dunn. Again, we are live with the election results. What is your insight, Dan?
So just some unofficial numbers that we've got 18 of the 21 precincts reporting, and the high school is being approved by 75+%, and the override is being approved by 67%. So I'd say the numbers aren't done, but the result is clear.
What does that say to you, Dan?
I'm really I'm very proud of the educational campaign that was out there, and I'm very proud of the results. I think that we laid out a really good case for both of these questions, and I'm really gratified that voters agreed and responded to that.
What about the percentages? Are you surprised?
I definitely am. I expected it to be closer for sure, but I'm absolutely pleasantly surprised. It means that we didn't get total consensus, but we certainly got closer than I thought we would.
Yeah, and clearly also in the process generated a vigorous and important conversation in general about the values in town and what our services and what our education is worth.
Yeah, and I do think that it was. It talks about, like, the turnout was. It looks it won't hit 50%, but at the same time, that is a pretty good turnout for a town race, and it does mean that we really did engage a big fraction of the town in this conversation.
So lots of people coming out to have their say.
Yes, yeah. I mean, more than 10,000, that's for sure. May get to 12. We'll see.
Dan, thank you.
Thank
we have
you
some
very
other
much.
of your
Yes,
colleagues
we
here
do.
to join us tonight.
We're going to get the
Again,
newest
unofficial results here.
perspectives.
Yes, and Steve DeCourcy, our newest select board member, thank you for joining us live with election results. And so hearing upon 70 to 30%, 70%, 75% rather in favor unofficial of the reporting precincts now for the Arlington High School, as well as the override rather.
So hard
Get those
to
two
keep them
confused.
straight,
Everyone, I
even
think.
after all
So,
this
what
time.
do you think of this? Having been in the town for so many years, and this is first time on the select board.
Yes, well, no, I think it's great, and we had talked so much about the need for a new high school, and I think it's great news. I was a student. I told people I was a student there during the last renovation, and it's such great news for Arlington that we're going to be getting a new building. So, and the voters, it was overwhelming, and I thought it was going to be fewer people who were going to support the override, but it appears it's not going to be that much of a drop-off. So I think people listened carefully, and I think the case was made to continue this plan of going out periodically for an override, but being responsible with spending.
I would think, and James, you did a little bit more work on the override than myself, but not having had an override since 2011, these are something that towns deal with periodically. We're more, I would say, perhaps used to having an override, and 6-7 years ago is a stretch.
Yeah, no, it's a long time, and I think one thing that we really needed to do as a town is reset the commitments to the voters, because the length of time between overrides, it almost outstripped some of the commitments were made on increases in school spending, and of course the enrollment at the schools increased so much during that time period. So now there's a reset. People were made aware how the town is going to spend their money over the next few years, and I think they were satisfied without those explanations.
Yeah, and I have to say I have enjoyed listening to both you and Diane kind of pay testament to the fact that you have been high school students here in Arlington. You have an understanding that those of us who have perhaps been in town a long time, as I have, but never went to high school here, you really have this kind of long-term and deep-seated sense of how important this is, how necessary it has been, et cetera. And, it must be really a nice moment for you, especially I think you've had kids go through the high school as well, right?
Exactly, and it truly is. Some people would say I've been talking about it too much. The fact I went there, but my son graduated last week. He was the 15th.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He was the 15th member of our family, my wife's and mine extended family, to graduate from the high school. So it's special. My mother went to the high school, and I think, we're all so proud of the building and so proud of the town, and I think it's really, as we move forward, it's just going to be a great thing.
And not to point out age or anything, but the high school has not been touched since then. And at one point, it was touched almost nearly every generation, adding on as the town grew. I did a special report on that, looking into that and what the high schoolers think of it now. And overwhelmingly, they see it too, that it's just prohibitive to the way that they want to learn, the way they want to teach. And so, what do you say though to you though as a member of the town and having gone through appreciating the historic aspects of it? What do you say to those who opposed it on those grounds of losing a historic building, or at least something from 1914 that's one of the not the original high school building, but one of the earlier ones? Right,
and thankfully we still have the original high school right here behind Town Hall. And yeah, one of the things people said over the years about Arlington High, it looks too good from the outside, and people don't see the inside of it. And you can get nostalgic about the columns and the clock, and I still call it the A building, the building on the left there, but it's long past its prime. And that's where you really don't have a good reuse alternative to keep that building. And while we have strong memories, and even this year at the high school graduation, one of the student speakers spoke about how proud, that's our building, right, and we're proud of it, but we need a new one. And I think that's, we can have the great memories, but it's time to move on.
Excellent. Thank you for your insights,
Steve.
Thank
you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. And we also have another newer member, but also a legacy member as well, if I could say, following father and uncle, correct?
So my father's cousin, and then his father. It's my father's uncle. So.
Great. Well, thank you for
So
joining us.
and in this case, we're talking about the
Who also
select
has a
board,
long
not the high
history at
school.
Arlington High.
Yes. So we have John Hurd here,
Sure.
in case those who didn't know, the select board member.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, John, I mean, obviously you've been on the board for a goodly amount of this conversation.
Sure.
The public conversation, as well as all the presentations made to the board in preparation for these votes. I'm wondering what your reaction is specifically to the override, because I think a lot of people yesterday or last week might have expected the vote, at least, for the debt exclusion to go the way that it did.
Sure.
The override did seem much more in contest than it is turning out to be. So I'm wondering what your reaction to that is.
Yep. Since I ran last year and up until last week, since we've been serving, the debt exclusion and the override has been the main topic of conversation. It's really the two main issues that have been discussed. Everything else has been sort of in the back burner since then. And everyone sees Arlington High School, and we know, everyone that has been in the building knows that has to be replaced. So it's not a big surprise on that result. The override, there was a good messaging campaign, but it seemed, especially in the last couple of weeks, there was more people that seemed to come out against it, raise questions about the override, the spending, the limits, how long the override would last. So we're a little more concerned about that vote, but it's just a testament to the campaign and the messaging. We, as a board, and the campaign in favor of the override really did a good job of reaching out to voters and explaining why we need it. That's the main thing, is to say, we're not just coming in with all these new spendings. This is something that we need as a town periodically because of Proposition 2.5, just to continue to sustain our current services. So I think we got that message out. But yeah, like some of my colleagues have said, it was surprising that the margin was what it was, but it was all a testament to the messaging that we got out to the voters.
Right. Not as much so as we mentioned with the high school, and Brenda has done, as she had mentioned herself, extensive work around both the history and the current situation at the high school. And I know that you have become an expert on that.
Oh, yes. And it's interesting because even at the start of where the 1914 Fusco House is, there was a debate about settling it there. And in fact, the town meeting approved it, and then there was enough votes to actually get it on the ballot, which it ultimately approved. So now we have a look at what it has become over the years, grown since then. We did a story and listening to what current high schoolers think. So we have that story for you here while we wait more official numbers. But as we hear right now, 75% of the voters having approved money to be supported for Arlington High School, $291 million high school with $86 million expected to be coming from the state.
And just before we go into the package, we do want to thank John Hurd and the rest of the members of the Select Board who've joined us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. We got a chance to see what Arlington High School is like for students, visiting them in classrooms, the library, music and CAD lab, and hearing about how the school's conditions affect them. Some going as far as saying they wouldn't wish the building on anyone. Despite that, they try to foster a positive culture and will fight for a building that matches it.
I love Arlington High. I love my teachers and my classes.
It's a high energy level. It's pretty full of life.
It's a school full of really energetic kids, and it's a school with teachers who care about the students and want them to learn.
But at Arlington High School, a sprawling campus with buildings constructed nearly every generation from 1914 to the 1980s, it's getting harder to do that, say those who are in it.
When people ask me about my school, and they're like, "Oh, the beautiful pillars at the front," and I'm like, "You should see the inside. It's horrible."
From the triangular-shaped French room to blocked views in science rooms to the cramped band room, the sentiment is the same.
I think the renovation, just a renovation wouldn't be enough to...
Yeah, I think
it took us about, I don't know, 10 years to get an air conditioning unit installed in this room.
I think also in general, the school, you kind of walk around the hallways and it doesn't really always feel like a positive learning environment.
And that's why AHS could go from this to this. A $291 million brand new high school.
Having the new school says that we as Arlington community value education and value the environment in which our students are learning.
Superintendent Kathleen Bodie and an appointed high school building committee have been working on coming up with a building plan for several years. In 2013, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges said the school would lose its accreditation unless things such as inadequate room sizes and blocked views are changed.
Some rooms are just built just designed kind of weirdly. It's just funny with there's big objects just in the way.
You don't understand how much time we spend working around the building. I have to do my labs in sections so that everybody can have some electricity. We'll make it work for now, as it is, but I think a new facility would really help us do more.
This is Old Hall, the oldest part of Arlington High School, originally built in 1914. It's a time when students weren't even required to go to high school. In fact, many didn't, working on local farms instead. But society changed, wars were fought, and the focus on education grew, and each time a new building with it. And now educators say it's time to start from scratch to serve this generation and the ones to come.
We actually have the entire body of this guitar all cut out just with this one machine.
We know that we teach differently now than we did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We know that the demands and expectations on education have changed. And we know that this facility doesn't support even the way we are teaching now.
I think that everyone initially believed that we were going to do a renovation addition. So in terms of space, we're not really getting anything new. We're getting it redesigned in a different way.
You can look straight across and see the other one right there. So the links don't border any classrooms. They are pretty much unsupervisable, so it's where a lot of kids go when they don't want to be seen.
The proposed school would reduce hallway space and wings would be organized by subject. And it would accommodate a growing student body, 1,700 plus students, roughly 400 more than there are now.
Balcony, seriously? Balcony.
When showing these sophomore honors biology students the architectural rendering, surprise and excitement at what could be.
Okay, here we go.
That's big.
Ooh. Here's the gym.
Ooh.
It's gonna be awesome. I know I won't be able to go to school in it, but it's just really exciting to think about.
Just like people in town, some students remiss on losing part of the front lawn and the columns that grace it, but willing to let them go for the greater good.
My parents and my grandparents also went to this high school, so it's kind of sad that history is being lost. But at the same time, I feel like it might, the benefits that we're going to be able to reap from it is probably worth it.
A hope that adults will think the same when voting whether or not to change their future come June 11th.
I'd say do it. I would not wish this building on any of the kids who are younger than me.
If your headlight is out, you get arrested, right? Or at least fined by the police, right? I feel like the headlight's out.
Having a nice space to learn makes people want to learn. I think that's something really important for the future.
In the meantime, they'll do as the song says. Keep on fighting till the end. Students championing a new high school till the end. But ultimately, it's voters who will make the decision on Tuesday, June 11th. If you want to see the high school for yourself, you have one more chance. There will be tours on Sunday, June 2nd, starting at 1 in the afternoon. Next week, we'll have a closer look at classrooms and more on just what and how students are learning these days. James? Okay, so that was a report that we had in a newscast from a couple of weeks ago. We are here live at Town Hall with election results and the unofficial results from poll watchers from Build Arlington's Future campaign. Did I get that right, Len?
Building Arlington's Future.
Right, and Len Diggins is a member of that. So the unofficial results are around 75% in favor of funding the high school. So those are the results we know, as well as unofficial results for the override.
Of 67%, more or less, right? So about 2/3 and 3/4 respectively for the override and the debt exclusion. Overwhelming or resounding victories, that's for sure. But we asked Len to join us because he has spent the day in a brand new way for himself, I think, and in a way that very few of us do. And has gleaned some insights, and we're going to ask him to share those with us. So Len, I know, as Brenda mentioned, that you were poll watching this morning on behalf of the Building Arlington's Future campaign. Tell us what the experience was like and some of the things you learned today.
Yeah, it was really interesting, kind of getting some of the nitty gritty of how the election process works. I mean, first off, I have to really give kudos to those who were really involved with the campaign. I mean, I helped out in a very, very small way, but my participation level gave me a chance to see just how well organized the campaign was. So I was one of 3 poll watchers. This morning there was a poll watcher for each of the precincts at the Thompson School, and essentially the campaign had a list of people that they knew supported the two ballot questions, and I was just there to check them off. And the rules are that when they come to vote, they have to announce their name. I have a list, and then I check off their name, and then around midday, someone from the campaign will collect that list, and anyone who hasn't voted, they will call them or reach out to them in order to urge them to get to the polls. So by this morning, seeing the number of people that were coming in and the number of people that were on the list, I had a pretty good indication that the people were showing up to vote. Because it's one thing to say that you support something, but it's another thing to actually get out there and vote. And so the people were coming out. So I left this morning with a pretty good vibe about how things were going to turn out.
Mm-hmm. So you felt like you really were able to, get a sense well before the polls closed of the way things were going.
Yeah, if the trend continued, then I felt that would be the case. And my understanding too is that most of the people, a lot of people show up in the mornings, and at a school at a location like the Thompson School, you would imagine that most are going to show up then, and maybe some will show up later on. So it's a barbell type distribution of turnout, and so assuming that pattern persisted, it would be good. Mm-hmm. It would be a good turnout. A good result, a positive result for those who support the campaign.
Oh, thank you, Len, and for your information regarding the unofficial results and the poll watching that was done. I also want to mention that we do have some official results, again, from the town results that will be officiated by tomorrow, I would think, but these are the initial numbers. They usually don't change. But, and again, seeing around the same lines, 70% in favor of supporting the debt exclusion for Arlington High School, and 60% roughly in favor of supporting an override to fund services and the stabilization fund in the town of Arlington. So thank you, Len, and thank you for your insight. And yes. And so, of course, the big question that was question number one is something that we've been dealing with since we first heard of from the national, the NEASC.
Right. The New England Association of Schools and Colleges.
Yes, I had that in my head earlier, but it wouldn't come out right now, since 2013. So we have someone who is from the face of the Arlington High School Building Committee who has been following this from the get-go, and we have him joining us right now. Jeff Thielman, please come on over. And yes.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Congratulations,
yeah,
Jeff.
A lot. Thank you.
So Jeff, having been the face of or a 16-member voting board that began in 2016, and a year and a half of nearly a dozen of public meetings and so forth, how is it to be at this point where the high school has been approved?
It's a very good feeling. 76, 77% of the voters in the town of Arlington voted for the high school. I think there's overwhelming support for it. There was a lot of listening. There was a good dialogue in the town over the past 2.5 years. And I think the people in the community wanted a high school that was clear. And tonight it was just overwhelming. We never expected a margin this significant. So we were very overwhelmed by this victory.
And this is nearly as well 50% of the voters turning out. This is, when did you're saying you're surprised, but was there an indication to you at all once town meeting overwhelmingly voted in support? Again, that's not the entire town, but it's representative of each precinct.
Yeah. So when town meeting voted the way town meeting voted, we felt pretty good on the building committee. We were very confident that we had a good shot, but we still had to convince a lot of voters. And one of the things we found as we were campaigning over the past 6 or 8 weeks was a lot of people didn't know much about the vote. The town meeting members are an informed group of people. They're the ones that pay attention. They're the ones that go to the meetings. They're the ones that were at our forums. They filled out the surveys. But, maybe 3,000, 4,000 people filled out the surveys, but tonight, I don't know, 12,000 people, something like that, voted. So we had to go out and educate a whole new group of voters that really weren't that aware yet of the building. And so there were a lot of questions we had to answer. There were a lot of back and forth meetings. There were meetings in precincts. We had a couple more forums. We had tours of the high school. Those are very helpful. I think people seeing the high school for the first time. The high school students did a video, and that actually got a lot of play in the community. I ran into people today who mentioned that video. And so, I saw the kids' video, and I'm thinking to myself, we worked really hard on this video.
They upped me. I did a video as well, not knowing they were going to sneak one out there. And
Yeah, they upped us all. So, the kids, I think, and a kid sold it. In a lot of ways, kids sold their parents. I mean, I heard lots of stories of, today campaigning, lots of stories of people saying, yeah, my daughter's been after me to vote for it. I'm going to vote for it. I'm going to vote for it. So that's a great feeling.
We earlier in the broadcast got to speak to a couple of select board members who are themselves alums of the school.
Yeah.
And one of them, at least, had been through a period of renovation, one of the renovation periods in the school. So it was definitely, obviously, particularly meaningful for them. And I can see what you mean in terms of that kind of cross-generational influence and interest in this particular building.
Yeah, it was funny, I ran into about maybe, 6 weeks ago, I ran into somebody who told me that he was involved in the override campaign, the debt exclusion campaign in the mid-1970s to build a new high school, which failed. And so this vote, he said, I'm not letting this happen again. And so there were folks like that. And there were folks who graduated from Arlington High School in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s who said, it is about time that we do this. There was actually a lot of support from people who lived in the community for a long period of time. 77% of the voters voting yes on this. It's more than Belmont. Belmont had about 75%. It's probably one of the highest in the state. We just had a little conversation with the MSBA. They're very excited about Arlington's vote because it's decisive. And that's all good news.
Yeah, what do you have to say about the process and how you feel like the process has been? And would you do anything differently? Did you do everything that you think was, did you do it right?
So we worked with owner's project manager Skanska and an architectural firm, HMFH. Both of those folks have done projects all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They had high praise for our process. They had high praise for us listening to the voters. We made lots of adjustments in the design based on what people told us. We tried our best to reduce price based on feedback from the community. I think we did everything we possibly could in the process. We had multiple public forums. We had surveys. Our meetings were open to the public. We had tours of the high school. We listened to people constantly. It was a very much a good dialogue between the community and the building committee. I think really at the end of the day, when people were presented with the facts, they were voting yes. They saw the facts, they saw the building needed to be changed, they saw the layout, they saw the confusing and complicated layout, they listened to the kids, they listened to the teachers, and they voted yes.
Yeah, I think I'll just throw in, Jeff, that, we at ACMi have had a privileged position over these last couple of years in our public affairs work and in our news work of really being able to tell kind of the course of how the campaign was going and the information. And that listening that you were talking about and have invoked several times, I dare say, and this is just my opinion, that if this vote had been done a year ago, these would not have been the numbers. And that it's been a very important year of listening and responding on behalf of the school building committee that really has made a big difference.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. I mean, we put so much information on the website. Anybody who sent an inquiry to the building committee, we got back to them right away, or as quickly as we possibly could with all the information. And our whole MO in this campaign and in this education process was just share information, put information on blog posts, let people see the building, let people have the facts, let people make up their own mind. And at the end of the day, I think 76, 77% of the voters said this is a good deal for the town. This is something we have to do. And I think by and large they were pleased to do it.
Does not feel divided.
I don't think the town feels divided. I think even those who participated in the process and I'm sure voted no tonight, I think they made us a lot better. They made the campaign better. They made us work harder on the website. They made us work harder in terms of our communication. We knew, for example, at town meeting, there were going to be a lot of people or some people opposed to the project. So we worked really hard on a presentation that made it very clear to the voters and to town meeting in particular why they needed to vote yes. And so, I think the opposition made us work harder, and years from now, I think a lot of people who were on the other side are going to look back with pride on the fact that they participated in a process that led to a truly great high school.
It truly is democratic.
Congratulations, Jeff, and thanks for joining us. While we have been talking to Jeff, in fact, more results have been rolling in, and we are going to close the broadcast tonight by re-inviting onto the set John Hurd from our select board to share with us all of the latest results.
Just in. All right, so we got results from precincts 1 to 6. And I'll read the percentages for each question. So precinct 1, question 1, yes, 76.26%, no, 23.74%. Question 2, yes, 71.51%, no, 28.49%. These are the results for precinct 2. Question 1, yes, 71.19%, no, 28.81%. Question 1, question 2. Yes, 61.67%, no, 38.33%. Precinct 3, question 1, yes, 78.14%, no, 21.86%. Question 2, yes, 72.14%, no, 27.86%. Results for precinct 4. Question 1, yes, 74.58%, no, 25.42%. Question 2, yes, 68.28%, no, 31.72%. Results for precinct 5. Question 1, yes, 71.91%, no, 28.09%. Question 2, yes, 63.82%, no, 36.18%. And for precinct 6, we have question 1, yes, 70.29%, no, 29.71%. Question 2, yes, 63.12%, and no, 36.18%. 78.88%.
Yes, so
Pretty
for
consistent.
supporters of the two measures, certainly there's a pleasing monotony to those
Sure,
numbers,
sure.
yes.
And I do have precinct 8 here if we want to do that. Yep.
So precinct 8 is yes, 78.78%, no, 21.22%. Question 2, yes, 72.34%, and no, 27.66%. And that is precinct 8.
Okay,
Precinct 20?
and the very latest.
Precinct 20. Question 1, yes, 74.72%, no, 25.28%. Question 2, yes, 69.43%, no, 30.57%.
And precinct 13 and 15, these were actually one of the earliest. They were just sitting over here waiting for you.
Precinct 13, yes, 72.19%, no, 27.81%. Question 2, yes, 60.49%, no, 39.51%. And we have precinct 15.
My precinct.
Yes, 78.74%, no, 21.26%. And question 2, yes, 68.22%, and no, 31.78%. So overall, pretty consistent numbers.
Yes, very much so. As you read them out, I think everybody
Again, those numbers
got
are
that
from the
message
town
loud and
clerk's
clear.
office for both the debt exclusion and override. John, what do you think this puts us as a town now? So $5.5 million to fund the stabilization fund and starting financial year 2019,
Sure.
as well as funding, approving funding, an expected cost of $291 million, $86 million coming from the state. Where does that put Arlington now with our services, our education? You know, we've redone our elementary schools. Where do you think that puts us as a town?
Well, as far as the schools, it really puts us in a spectacular position. Now we have all of our elementary schools, like you said, and the one final piece of the puzzle has been Arlington High School, which has been looming over our heads for years and years. And personally, for me, we talked about some people that have gone through the high school, but my boys are in kindergarten and preschool right now, so they'll get the benefit of the high school once it's finished. And you know, I'm really excited that they get to experience that and the generations to come of kids that can really thrive in the new building. Arlington students do so well already that with a building that really supports their learning methods, the sky's the limits for what students can do in that building. And our school system is already magnificent. You know, as part of the override, we filled in a couple of the gaps that the school committee identified. So the school department should be really in a good position to certainly continue the great progress they've made, but move the school system forward. And now with the override passing and debt exclusion, the onus now shifts to us in the government and the town officials to stick to the commitments that we set out when we asked the voters for the override. We told the voters there were certain things that we'd be committed to, and we'd continue to maintain financial stability and really smart spending. In Arlington, we like to say you get a lot of bang for your buck compared to similar cities and towns with the same types of services and population. So it's on us to continue that and stick to the commitments that we've extended to the voters.
Yep, and I think that as pleasing as these results are, and as much as they point us toward the future, I'm glad that you also mentioned that part of the override conversation also had to do with the schools.
Yes.
Sure.
And that is a big part of why we actually needed the override, need an override in general. So
The
much is
benefit
being
of
driven.
doing an override now.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. Much is being driven by the educational needs of our students in town. And as you said, I'm sure that the voters will be holding you to account. I'm sure that the town officials, as they have in our experience, will continue to be responsive to voters' concerns.
Absolutely.
We at ACMi will make sure that that's happening as well, as best we can. We will continue to provide full coverage of the operations of our government, of the aspirations of our government, and of the needs and desires of our populace. So you can find all this and more on ACMi News. For tonight, we're going to wrap it up at this point. We thank John and the other members of town officialdom who have joined us tonight. I'm James Milan.
And I'm Brenda Mahoney. Please stay tuned. Make sure you tune in at the end of this week as we have our newscast with all of the latest news. Of course, the reaction and to the ballot and the debt exclusion and the override, as well as other news that's always happening in Arlington.
Thanks for joining us. Good night.